Alrighty, so now we're going to start setting up the Zap that connects ThriveCart to MemberPress. And I should explain first off, before we begin, that you have to create 2 Zaps for each product that you want to integrate with Zapier, with ThriveCart and MemberPress, because what happens is new members, and I'll show you this Zap is already set up, but just want to explain this real quick because it's important. Whenever a new sale occurs and that member does not yet exist inside of MemberPress, we have to create that member. And that's what this first action here, number 4, does, is it creates the member. And then this action number 7 actually creates the transaction. So if you've done any work with MemberPress, you know that we've got transactions, and we've got subscriptions, and we got members. So we can't add a transaction, which is what gives people access, unless that member exists. The Zap will fail. So we actually have to create the member first if they don't exist. Now, why would we have 2 Zaps? Well, the second Zap is going to add transactions for folks who already exist. And so what's going to happen is when a sale comes through, both Zaps are going to fire, and the first Zap is going to try to add a new member. And if that member doesn't exist, it'll create them. But if it tries to add a member who already exists, then that Zap is going to fail. But the other Zap, which just looks for an existing member and creates a transaction, is going to succeed. So it's a bit of a workaround, a fail-safe mechanism to ensure that whether it's a recurring transaction, whether it's somebody who already has a user account in MemberPress or not, in both situations, we're going to have that person added to the account. So this is a very important thing to understand. Hopefully you get my point. And let's go ahead and move on to the first Zap. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to your ThriveCart account, head over to the Settings tab, head over to Integrations and click View. And you're going to scroll all the way down. And in my account, you cannot see the Zapier option because I've already connected it. But you're going to see a Zapier option, I think, right? Go to Integrations, scroll down, click on the Get Started button for Zapier. Correct. Okay, so you're going to see that in your account. And just to be sure it's not here, ThriveCart API. Yeah, that's right. So it's going to be under integrations. Now, when you do that, what's going to happen is it's going to give you a link, and that link will take you over to Zapier. And you can see here it says ThriveCart by invite, which means that you have to click through their link in order to be able to use the ThriveCart trigger application. Okay. Now, once you've done that, you'll be able to use this as the trigger, and we can begin our Zap. Now, the first Zap we want to create is the Zap for new members. So these are people, they may not be new customers for you, but these are the people who don't yet have a user account in your MemberPress installation. Okay, so these are the first people we want to take care of. And the way we're going to set this up is we're going to set the trigger action to be any purchase. Okay, and then we're going to connect a ThriveCart account. I've already done that. You might have to do this. As you can see, I have 4 of these already, which is why I can't add any more. And you'll connect it. You'll get some steps to do that. It'll tell you what to do. Then you're going to go to Edit Options. And now for product, I'm not selecting any particular product here. And the reason I'm not doing that is because in this particular case, we've got 2 ThriveCart products which both connect to the same membership level inside of MemberPress. Okay, now if I were to select a product here, then I'd only be able to select one at a time. Okay, so we're already limiting ourselves. So it's better to leave this open and then create a filter step, which is the next step, which will allow us to say, okay, let all of the product sales trigger this action, and then we create a separate filter later on. Okay, so I would leave this blank. Now, one situation where you wouldn't leave this blank is if you've only got one product that connects to one membership. And in that case, you can actually choose that product. And that way, this Zap will only run when sales happen for that particular product. Okay, but in this case, we've got two products. And you can see up here in the Zap name, I've got my own little notation. I'm saying product number 12 inside of ThriveCart and product number 9 inside of ThriveCart both connect to membership level ID 3873 inside of MemberPress. So this is just my own way of reminding myself which products connect to which memberships. You don't have to use that convention. That's just my own convention. And once you've done that, you can continue on to the next step. Now, in this step, what I found is that if you try to test the ThriveCart to get a live sale, to get the live test data, it usually returns nothing, in which case you just skip it, okay? You can just use the test data, that'll work fine. All right, now we're gonna move on to step number 2, which is the filter step. And it's filter by Zapier. And only continue if, that's the only option. And then filter setup and testing. Okay, now you can see what I've done here is I've said only allow the Zap to continue if the product ID is either 12 or 9. And if I go over to Tara's ThriveCart, so this is one of our customers. Thank you so much, Tara, for giving me permission to document this stuff using your accounts. You're the best. You can see that if you hover over the edit button here, it'll tell you in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the URL, the product number. So this is 14, 13, 12, and here's 9. So 9 and 12. These are the two products that connect to the same membership in MemberPress. So products 12 and 9 connected to membership 3873. MemberPress memberships. If we scroll down, we find 3873. So this is the membership that people are being added to if they purchase either product number 9 or product number 12 inside of ThriveCart. Okay, moving right along, we are going to add another step called numbers, and this is the formatter by Zapier. So that's what you want to search for, formatter. You select that, then you're going to select numbers. You're going to edit the template, and you're going to select perform math operation. Okay. You're going to select divide, and you're going to pull in from the first step the order total. The order total. Now, in this case, we don't have the data, but I have used live data, so I know that what ThriveCart does is it doesn't give you the order total in a currency. It just gives you a number, and that number has extra zeros on it. So for example, if the product is $10, ThriveCart will spit out 1000. So it'll spit out 1,000. And in order to put that into a format that MemberPress interprets as the correct amount, because if you just leave it as it is, it's going to come into MemberPress as a $1,000 transaction and screw up your reporting. In order to avoid that, we're going to take that order total and we're going to divide it by 100. Okay, and that's all we're going to do. Okay, now we can move on to step number 4. And in this step, we're going to select webhooks. We're going to select the post action. Then we're going to edit the template. And for the URL, if you're following my documentation here, I've got the URL that you can copy and paste. It's going to be your website wp-json /mp/v1/members. Okay, you have to use this URL, and make sure if your site's not HTTPS, if it's HTTP and you don't have an SSL certificate, that you use HTTP and not HTTPS. The payload type is going to be JSON. All right, and these here under data, you have to use all of these fields. So these are required fields. You've got username, first name, password, email, last name, and they have to be typed exactly as you see them. So username, all lowercase, first underscore name, all lowercase, password, email, last underscore name. And what you're going to do is you're going to use here in step 1, you're going to use the customer email as the username. Okay, this just keeps things simple inside of WordPress and just makes it easy for people to log in. You don't want them to create custom usernames. You could do that later. I'll let them do it later. For first name, you're going to use the step number 1 data and select the customer first name. For the password, now this step is interesting because for the password, what we want to use is the order ID. The order ID. And the reason that we're using the order ID is because every order ID is unique, and a password has to be sufficiently long and sufficiently complicated and sufficiently unique that it's sort of, works as a password. So we're going to go ahead and use the order ID. Okay, and then that's going to become that user's password going forward. Now for email, obviously we're going to use the customer email, and for last name, we're obviously going to use the customer last name. Okay, leave everything here as default and scroll down to the basic auth section. And here you can see we've got some authentication details. Now this is exactly what I showed you how to do in the first video of this series. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch that. If you don't do this step, the Zaps just won't work. Okay, so you got to do this step. I've got my authentication information already in here, and the one that we created in the last step is still here in this open tab. All right, and then we're going to continue, and then you can send the test to MemberPress. Now, bear in mind, when you send a test webhook, it actually performs that action. So, for example, this email, this is a test email that ThriveCart created, but if I send this test webhook to Zapier, it's actually going to create this customer's account. So just be aware that if you're using live data and you have an actual customer's email address in here, you might accidentally add an extra transaction for them. Okay, now you're going to do this step and then you're going to click continue. If this step doesn't work, you might want to check your MemberPress members because you might already have this user created, which would explain why it doesn't work. You cannot create a user that is already in existence. Okay. Next step is a delay step, and the reason we're doing a delay here is we just want to make sure that the previous step has enough time to actually create that member before we create the transaction. So if we were to create the transaction immediately after creating the member, might not be enough time, right? So the Zap might not work. So all we've done here is we've created a delay step where we delay for a certain number of time, certain quantity of time, and then we're going to select 1 minute, and that's it. Now the next step is also very important, and again, this is a Webhooks by Zapier step. However, unlike the last step, we are not using the post action, we are using the get action. And what we're getting is the information about the user that we just created. Now you may say, well, why would we need information about the user that we just created? Because in order to create that user, we had to put that information in that step anyway. And the answer to that is because even though we created the user, we didn't know ahead of time what that user's ID would be inside of MemberPress. So that's actually what we're getting. We're getting the member's ID as it's defined in MemberPress. Okay, now the URL here is also different. So be sure to use the correct URL from this integration doc that I have here. Okay, so this is wp-json/mp/v1 members. I think it's different. Let's just double check that, make sure. No, actually this is the same URL. I think it's different for creating a transaction, if I'm not mistaken, okay? So anyway, back to step number 6 here. So we've got our URL. Now here where it says query string params, what we want to do is we just need one piece of information. We're going to use the search function here, and we're going to use the email, the customer email from step 1 as the value. So what this step essentially does is it sends a webhook to MemberPress, says, hey, tell me everything you know about this member. Okay, and again, you leave everything as default. And again, you must do the authentication step here under basic auth. Okay, got to do this part. Once you've done that, you can click continue. And you can actually test this step to get that member's information from MemberPress. Okay, and you actually you have to test this step, in fact, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get the member's ID, or it's going to come out as null. Okay, and then you're going to move on to the next step, which is another webhook, and this time it is a post action. And let's go ahead and edit the template. Now you can see we've got a different URL. It starts the same way, but it ends with transactions instead of members. Payload type is JSON. Status, okay, so these are all the fields that you need. You need status coupon created at amount member membership gateway subscription. You got to have all of these, okay? Status is going to be set to complete. Coupon is going to be set to 0. Created at. You're going to pull this data from step 1 and you're going to use the order date. Okay, use the order date. Amount. You're going to pull this data from step 3 because as you recall, the default number that ThriveCart spits out is about 2 zeros too big, so you're going to use this output value. Now if there's nothing here, just go ahead and use output anyway and just select that step. Okay, now for member, you're going to go to step 6 and you're going to use the member ID, this very first value here. Now if you've done a live test, you're actually going to have a number in here, but since we're using test data and I didn't test the get step, this is empty, but it's going to be populated actually in a live test. Now for membership, what you want to do here is you want to go to your MemberPress memberships tab. You want to find the membership that you want to add people to when they make this purchase. Get the number and then paste that number here. Now, keep in mind that whatever terms you've configured for your membership are the terms that the transaction is going to follow. So, for example, if this is $20 a month, okay, and we create a transaction for this membership, that transaction will give access for 1 month. All right? And then after that, it's going to expire unless another transaction comes in and extends that person's access. Okay, so just bear in mind that whatever terms you have set for the membership you're adding people to, those are the terms that the transaction is going to reflect. Okay, now for gateway, just go ahead and set manual. And for subscription, go ahead and set 0. MemberPress doesn't actually require the members to have a subscription in order to access different products. The subscription field is mostly for if you're using the MemberPress default checkout process, which we're not. And once again, everything is default here except the basic auth, which again you must include in every webhook that you send to MemberPress. And then that part is done. So what we've done, just to review, we've pulled in some test data from ThriveCart. We've filtered the process to make sure that only the sales from certain products allow the Zap to continue. We've transformed the order total to a number that MemberPress can understand. We've set up a post action to create the member in MemberPress if they don't exist rather. We've created another action to delay, to just wait for a minute, literally. Then we've got another webhook here to get that member's information for the member that we've just created, where we get their ID. Then finally, we create a transaction inside of MemberPress that gives the member that we've just created access to the membership that is associated with the product they purchased in ThriveCart. And the final step that we want to do is we want to send them an email that gives them access to the membership. Now, the weird part about this, or maybe it's not weird, it's just how it works, is using the Zapier method. If you add a new member or a new transaction, it doesn't send the welcome email to that member for whatever reason. So maybe MemberPress requires you to use their checkout in order for the welcome email to go out. I don't know. But for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. So what we want to do is we want to send that member their login information, obviously. Now, there's a number of ways that you can do this. The simplest way would be just to use email or Gmail. You can actually connect your own Gmail account and hook it up with Zapier so that whenever Zapier sends an email, it's going to use your Gmail account. So it's going to look like it's coming directly from you, which is actually a really cool little trick that a lot of people don't know about. And that's what I'd recommend. But just to keep things simple for now, we're going to use email by Zapier, which is going to use Zapier's email server. And we're going to select the action send outbound email, which I think it's the only action. That's right. And then we're going to create the email that goes out to the member. So here in the to field, of course, we want to use the customer's email address. In the subject, you're going to have whatever subject you want for your welcome email. So here it says, welcome to Wham Bam Business Plan. Your logins are inside. Okay. Now, here you could write whatever you want. Just make sure that your email has 3 things. The login URL, so this is where members go to log in to the membership. The username, which we created in an earlier step, which is going to be their email address. And the password, which, as you recall, is the order ID value. Okay, and that's their password. Now, 2 other fields you might want to set is you might want to set your from name so that it actually displays as coming from you or your website or your brand, and your the email address that you want people's replies to go to if they happen to email you back. And finally, you might want to set force line breaks to yes. In fact, I'm going to do that now. Okay, and the reason for that is because if you don't do that, your email will look like this. It'll just be, there'll be no spacing. But now that we've set it, there will be spacing. So we're going to finish this step. We're not going to test it. And now we're going to turn the Zap on. Now, one question you may have is, should I keep my MemberPress integration inside of ThriveCart active? And I would say that if it's not working, just go ahead and leave it there. Just don't mess with it. Okay. If it's only working sometimes, you might want to turn it off, because then you might get duplicate transactions. Now, one final comment I want to make is you don't have to use the Zapier email or Gmail. You can actually use your email marketing program. For example, if you use ActiveCampaign, you would have to create 2 steps. You'd have to create an ActiveCampaign step which sends that user's details to ActiveCampaign and creates a custom field called password and passes the password value to that field. Then you'd probably want to delay for about a minute and then create another action step which sends an email from ActiveCampaign, or you could even do it through an automation inside of ActiveCampaign, which sends the welcome email configured however you like and includes the merge tag for that custom password field. Same result, different approach, but this is basically how this first Zap is set up. Now, in the next video, I'm going to demonstrate how to set up the Zap for recurring payments, which is a little bit different than it is for these new members. So make sure to watch that video if you have a recurring product. If you don't have a recurring product, you don't need to watch that video. This will suffice. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, just let me know. Thank you.